Hi everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at G&G's MIT or Military Intelligence Tracer Unit. Now this particular unit I've actually owned for a little while, so this isn't a level 1 first impressions review, but a combined level 1 and level 2 review of this product. So here's my level 1 and 2 review of the G&G MIT unit. So this is the tracer unit strapped on the front of the G&G. So actual performance, as I mentioned, across the top I've got So first up, let's take a look at what you get in the box. Now this particular version I bought was the PQ version, so you get a PQ box with a targeting laser in it. And so that's the first thing we'll pull out, that's the PQ box. It has a functioning, I think it's a red coloured laser in there. You get for that 2 cables. One is the pressure switch to activate the targeting laser, and the second one is actually to connect it to your tracer unit. You get some stickers, you get the charge cable, and of course you get the MIT unit itself. What you don't get in the box, sadly, is a set of instructions. There are some on the back, but they're not entirely comprehensive. First, let's take a closer look at the bits themselves and some of the good features. Now, I was attracted to the G&G MIT after the failure of my Big Dragon, primarily based on the features it promised. So looking at the tracer unit itself, it's pretty solid, fairly hefty, full aluminium build. The only bits of plastic are sort of in around this display. 14mm CCW thread, and it does actually come with a little grub screw, which allows you to better secure it onto your weapon. Now, as I said, it does come with this little display, which tells you all the information about the unit, including some of the readout features. Talking about features, this has a number of them. First of all, there's the standard tracer feature. It will light up your fluorescent BBs. But it also has built in the ability to measure the velocity of your shot, so your FPS, or your meters per second if you want to measure it that way. It also can tell you your rate of fire and the total number of shots that have passed through the G&G MIT. It also has 2 other features which I've never used and I think aren't really applicable here, but there is a laser simulation feature and an infrared simulation feature, both which we'll talk about later. Lastly, this has an integrated lithium-ion battery, so it's rechargeable, came with charger obviously, and you don't need to carry batteries with you. Now let's take a look at the PQ box it came with. So it's a nice little PQ box, pretty solidly feel. There's a space in behind this cover, if you unscrew that, for a battery. Now that battery is to power the laser directly, which is just a standard, I believe, a red laser. It's adjustable for both vertical and lateral movement, and as an alternative you can actually plug it into your G&G MIT unit. So this can be controlled either by the MIT unit itself, I'm not sure how that works, or you can plug it in with the pressure switch as a traditional targeting laser for your weapon. So for reference, the tracer unit is about 200mm long. I bolted it here on my W88C just so you can see what it looks like. It definitely adds a fair bit of length to the weapon and a decent amount of heft to the front. But now let's talk about things that are not so good with this tracer. First and foremost, I mentioned there were no instructions. Since all of the features of the tracer unit, including the tracer function, are turned off by default, you need to work out how to turn them on, and I found that to be quite difficult. The instructions I did find were not very clear and not very good. Secondly, I mentioned a grub screw which goes just in here. This was designed to lock the tracer unit onto your barrel, onto your thread. I actually found that to be more annoying than useful at the end of the day, so much so that I removed the grub screw and don't use it. I also noticed when I used it that the grub screw did do a little bit of damage to my thread, and I wasn't happy with that. The internal battery is a very mixed blessing. It lasts well for the functions. I was able to use this as a tracer and a chronograph, and I used it for several hours in a game and it was fine, but because it is a built-in battery, there are no field swaps, so if you did run the battery flat, then you wouldn't be able to change it in the field. Secondly, this unit has a very poor standby power usage. Basically, I could leave this in my bag for maybe a day or two and I would find that it won't turn on. The battery will be completely flat within that time. What I find I have to do is leave it on charge almost all the time when I'm not using it, otherwise it tends to flatten its internal battery. The actual tracer performance is also not as good as I'd hoped. Now, I originally had the big Dragon tracer and that worked really well. Very bright day and even in a day game and in a night game. Now, this unit works pretty reasonably in the dark. It's not as bright as the big Dragon, but during the day the tracing function, not that good. My big Dragon worked, this one doesn't. Lastly, the PQ box is not what I thought it was. It's not an external battery, it's a laser and it runs off this. Its functions are pretty much unknown. Thankfully it is pretty spacious. You could put an external battery for something else in here. So that's what I found to be not so good about the tracer. By and large I've stopped using it as a tracing unit because of the downsides, instead using it for a little bit of chronograph work and sometimes some shot counting, and that's about all I use it for actually. So I'm going to close this video out with my level 2 thoughts on the MIT unit. On the whole, it's not a good unit for me. It doesn't really suit what I want it for. The standby power usage is a real pain. If you don't remember to charge it and keep it charged before you need it, it will be flat and you can't field change a battery. So that's a big issue. Also a big issue to me was the fact that the tracing function was not as bright as I'd hoped it would be. The big Dragon I bought turned out to be really good, worked even during daylight games, so I was really happy with it. This one only really works in a nighttime feature or in a dark game. But I do like the chrono function, and that's pretty much what I hold on to it for. You can bolt it onto the front of any weapon with a CCW thread and go for gold. It tells you when it reads, it tells you the FPS, and it seems pretty accurate. Definitely matches up with my X-Cortec chronograph that I have, that I normally use. The 40mm CCW on this works pretty well. I haven't had any problems bolting it to any of the threads I've had available to me. But yeah, ultimately not for me, I'm afraid. Not as a tracer anyway. So that's my level 1 and 2 review of the MIT unit from G&G. Hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please do check out my channel. Subscribe to see more videos from me, and we'll catch up with you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Rock on!